I needed someone to tell me I was okay. Sad, horrible things happen, but you can still continue to live. I couldn't have children. So with my first husband, I tried, had 2 miscarriages, and turned out that I was never going to be able to carry a child. I didn't know how to handle basically what was happening in my life. Started to feel like a failure, already compounded with growing up with certain feelings and issues of not being good enough because I never felt that true love.
My guest today is Darcie Ward. She's an inspiring woman from sunny Panama City Beach, Florida. She's navigated some pretty challenging twists and turns in her life. And despite those odds, she's come out on top. She's a very successful real estate agent with an organization called Carillon Realty, and she sold over $40 million worth of luxurious real estate. And she's living the lifestyle that she's always dreamed about. But Darcie claims that what's making her feel most rich is not the financial success, but she values most this imprint that she's left on the hearts and the spirits of so many people in her beautiful Oceanside community. Welcome, Darcie. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Shelly-Anne. It's an honor to be here, and I'm super excited to be able to do this with you.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. I know that your story is going to be an inspirational one, and this life that you are now living, I know you have a lot of gratitude for it. But I'm just curious, like, had you always envisioned it to be this way?
Today, it has really surpassed what I could have ever expected.
Oh, that's amazing. But I understand, that like life wasn't always this way, and that you've come through some tough stuff but worked hard on the transformation. And so tell us a little bit about like what it was like, back when you were, growing up, childhood, that kind of stuff. How would you describe that?
So my childhood, in looking back, my parents were very young when I was born, and I often say that we grew up together. They were 18 when I was born. It was back in the 70s. So my parents did the best they could. They loved me as best they could. They took care of my basic needs, but I never truly felt that love. I always felt like I was an afterthought,
Mm.
and didn't realize how much I thought that until I went to a friend's house. I was about in 3rd grade, and her family life was completely different than mine.
Mm.
And I knew then that there was something very, very different about my family and how I was growing up. We had both been sick. We were young kids, and we were sick. And I just remember, running around, drinking Slurpees and things like that. And I went over to her house, and her mom had her in a robe on the couch, covered up, taking her temperature and things like that. And that is just not how my family was.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I thought, wow, so I was very surprised. And I saw my friend's mother and how she took care of her.
And so then, take me a little bit through like high school and then, into like your first career. Tell us a little bit about that.
Uh, because I felt that I was always searching for love. I got my first boyfriend when I was 14, and he came from a very dysfunctional family, and there were lots of issues there. And because I always searched for that love and that approval, I would do things, and I started to get in a lot of trouble, skipping school, not coming home, drinking, started to use drugs around this time, and that set the stage. And it set the stage for relationships, for some of the drug abuse, alcoholism. It was almost like a double life, even from a young age.
Mhm.
My parents would always say, "Don't tell anybody," because they drank a lot, and they would say, "Don't tell anybody." And I continued that cycle growing up.
Mhm.
Um, Now, when I turned 18, I did move out of my parents' house, never went back. When I married my first husband and had Jesse, Jesse lived with us and we had custody, and he was my boy, and I took care of him and potty trained him and taught him his ABCs and had his birthday parties. And I was very happy, content, and fulfilled at that time. Um, but my husband had a drug problem, and it increasingly got worse, and got to the point that the counseling and everything we tried didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a decision to leave that marriage. And in doing so, I thought that was preserving myself. And what ended up happening is I spiraled out of control.
Mm.
And there were things that he would do that I swore I never would. And after that divorce, I ended up down such a horrible, horrible road. But at that time too, I was always trying to better myself, and I was never really encouraged to go to college or to keep good grades or anything like that. But there was still something within me that wanted those things,
Mm-hmm.
and I did go to our community college my senior year. I was able to complete a program my senior year and get a job. At one of the local businesses. I had a long, successful career there, but ultimately what was happening is I said I never got fired from there, but that corporation was so large that when there were issues, I would apply for another job, and I would go from department to department to department. And that's how I was able to maintain long term at that company.
Mm-hmm.
They were so good to me, though. They were so good, and there were managers that I had that would say, "Is everything okay?
Mm.
Do you need help?"
Mm.
And I always refused because I thought I was strong enough and that I could get through these things. Um, so I continued down that path of progressively worse drug use and alcoholism. And my company said, we need somebody to go to Columbus, Georgia for this assignment. Nobody wanted to go. I said, I'll go. I'll go. Get me out of here. And essentially, I went to Columbus, Georgia to work on this team for the Mead Corporation. They gave me a company vehicle, they gave me a corporate apartment, they gave me a company credit card.
You had it
My
all.
salary, I was living on per diem. I mean, so there were so many wonderful things. And then looking back, if I would have done all that correctly, but instead, my alcoholism just flourished. There was a bar on every corner. It was nothing but a big party, and they would send me back home on occasion, and I would pick up right where I left off at home. And so, what I was doing at that time is I was running. I was running. Just get me away. If I'm away from my hometown, I'll be okay.
Mm.
If I'm over here with these new people, I'll be okay. But what happened is I continued down that path, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
What do you think that you
Um,
were running from?
Running from me, running from failure, running from addiction, running from I just always thought the answer was somewhere else. It was somewhere else. Ultimately, what I learned is the answer is within.
Mm. I guess at what point did you even get the slightest clue that it was within you?
I came back. That the assignment was over. They sent me back to my hometown, and I got another job within the company. And um, at that point in my life, that's when I realized that there was such a problem. I was running around with a crowd that I thought I never would. Um, I was living in an apartment. Here's the thing: being successful with that company, money was never an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It was never an issue. But I got to a point where I was living in an apartment with a lot of people, and there were no utilities. There was really nothing. And I went, okay, there's a problem. I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And that same ex-husband that I divorced for being a horrible drug addict got clean and sober, and his life was going extremely well. And I didn't know really how he was doing it or what had happened or what changed him.
Mm.
And I made a call to him, and I said, please help me. And he guided me to some help. And It was a 12-step program.
Hmm.
And he said, I want you to go to this meeting at this time. I did. He met me there. He introduced me to women. He gave me my first big book. And he helped me financially because I was in such a bind at that time.
Hmm.
And he truly helped me.
So was it the fact that the utilities were getting cut off and that you were just not living the way that you wanted to be living, that you were like, okay,
Yes.
something's got to change here, and that's what made you decide to try to take that step into something different?
I saw all the people that I was hanging around with, and I saw their lives. And even though mine was heading in that direction, it wasn't quite there yet.
Mm,
Not yet.
yeah.
And I already knew that I was heading there. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to feel that way. Without any help, basically on my own, I would say, okay, I'm not going to the bar tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not spending this money. I'm not going to be around these people. I tried so many times and couldn't. And
Right.
then that's when too, Shelly-Anne, I knew there was an issue because I couldn't. And very thankful to that first husband who showed me the way.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I didn't last long,
Yeah.
but then, and I kept on, and then there was this night, and I can tell you exactly. It was December 6th of 2000, and there I was again in that same hopeless, helpless, desperate spot. And I just cried out to God and said, please help me. When I cried out to God, there was this calming feeling that came over. And the first thought was, go to AA, go
Oh.
to an AA meeting. And I made that decision. And that next day, that's what I did. And that's when I really got serious about changing my life. Truly, I knew I wanted to change. I knew I didn't want to live the way I was living. I didn't know how not to, but I was willing. I had the willingness at that time to do whatever it took because I was so afraid of me,
Mm,
so afraid of where my life was going.
yeah.
So I went every day, every day. I did everything that it suggested. I got that sponsor. I started working the steps. And then, they do suggest not to get in a relationship for that first year. And I ended up not taking that suggestion
Mm.
because,
You're one of those, are you? You
as
learn the hard way, just like me too. I was the same way. I had to find out for myself always.
see, and in my mind, I'm like, I can do this though.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can handle this.
Yeah.
And I ended up in a relationship with a man in the program. Neither one of us had much sobriety, let alone any quality sobriety. And I can tell you after 6 months, I did relapse. And, they tell you whenever that happens, there's something that you missed or there's a reason why, and to go through and find that answer. And I know exactly what happened. And I don't blame anybody. I made a decision. But they also say that there comes a time when there's no mental defense and it's just between you and God. And there was a situation that occurred and I was not prepared for it. And I ended up picking up. I stayed in this relationship, making that decision that I was not going to do this no matter what. And it was an extremely tough time because he had his own set of issues, and he had two boys, and I'm very codependent as well. And so he would go do things and then I would go cover it up so the boys wouldn't know, so they wouldn't see what their dad was doing and stuff. And so a lot of sickness, even though I was, staying clean and sober, a lot of sickness. And what ultimately happened is, we ended up getting married and his oldest son, TJ, came to live with us. He had been in trouble. His mother could no longer deal with him. And he was, at 16, got his first DUI. He had been in a lot of trouble. He went into a treatment center and he got out of the treatment center. And the requirement for him to live with us was to go to meetings. because he was familiar. He was in treatment. And at that time, my second husband had a business. We had a business. So he worked with him, and things were okay for a while. And then he relapsed, and he ended up getting 5 felonies.
Mm.
And after that, he ended up committing suicide at the
Oh.
age of 18. There was a note, and he just said, "I can't do it anymore, and you all just don't understand."
Mm.
And the thing is we did understand. He just didn't know we understood.
Yeah, you did understand. I mean, you were going through the very same things that
Hmm.
he was dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had to have rocked your world.
I couldn't have children of my own, and I always ended up with men that had children. And I always said, God gave me children, just not in the form that I thought it would be.
Hmm.
And I love every one of them. I felt like they were God given. And yes, when TJ committed suicide, the absolute worst time in my life. And not only were we grieving and hurting over that, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, when's the other shoe going to drop with Tom? Because he never had long term sobriety.
Hmm.
And
And you thought that was gonna
my,
be a relapse for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And ultimately it was. It was. He kept it together for a while, and one thing that happened as a result of TJ's death was, and I do believe this was God inspired. Tom wanted to start a place for young people to go, because TJ never felt like he fit in, because we were all older and he didn't think we understood. And so he did create a nonprofit organization called TJ's Place of Hope. It's still going strong. It's in Montgomery County, in Dayton, Ohio. And young adolescents, when they're in trouble with the law, they have to go through TJ's Place of Hope.
Mm.
And so we were all a part of that, and the community came together, and there a lot of good came from that. Okay,
Hmm.
um, still didn't bring him back,
Yeah.
but that was something that we were able to do, and that kept him going. Okay, and then he ended up relapsing, Tom, and ran off with another woman,
Ugh.
and our business was tanking, and a lot of that was in my name. So financially, I was starting to see the repercussions of that again. And so there was so much loss, the
Yeah.
loss of TJ, the loss of my marriage.
Yeah.
And then
Financial.
I stepped away financially, and I stepped away from TJ's Place of Hope, because it was just all too much. Um, Completely heartbroken.
Hmm. Yeah. And that
And
was and this was in so what year was that? That would be 2005, I think. I'm
yes,
just trying to
yep,
follow the timeline here.
yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, like your world was rocked and everything's changed for you at this point. So now, like, did you manage to hang on to your sobriety at that point, or what happened to you in at this?
Because I made that decision back in March 24th, 2002 is my sobriety date. And because I made that decision after that second relapse that I was not going to pick up or use no matter what happened in my life. Like I said, when I made that decision, I had no idea what was about to come.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of this happened, um, I did not want to pick up, I did not want to drink, but I didn't want to feel any of this. And
Yeah.
I didn't know. Let me just tell you what happened. I laid in bed. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to go to work. Um, I had women at the program who came and surrounded me, and they picked me up, and they said, "Go wash your face,
Mm.
go to a meeting, go to work, come out to dinner." I mean, they like had to tell me what to do. And I followed their instructions, and I did everything that they told me to do. They loved me through
Mm.
it. And I just remember looking in the mirror every day saying, God, I know you got me. I know you do. I don't know how, but I know you do.
And
And
how would you
even,
describe that feeling? Like, I mean, I could just see the emotion in your
uh,
face even now as you talk about it.
I just, one foot in front of the other, doing what I was taught to do, even when I didn't want to, even when I didn't feel it. And I'll be honest, I did not feel that closeness with God. Now, I didn't blame him, but I didn't feel it. And I
Yeah.
did it anyway. So, I just kept, and now I will say this, throughout my life, childhood, teenage years, adult years, even in recovery, I've always played that victim, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. Look at my life. Look at what they've done. Look at this. Look at that. This was no exception. And even though I was, trying to do the right things and all that stuff, I remember going to an AA function, and there I sat crying the blues. And I will never, ever forget. And this was one of those pivotal, life changing moments for me. There was a woman in my life, her name was Gail, and she came up to me and she said, are you going to continue to be a martyr, or are you going to choose to live?
Mm.
She had probably said that to me so many times, but for whatever reason, on that day, I heard it, and it clicked, and I said to myself, just like I did that time after that second relapse, I will start living life. I'm going to start living life.
In that
And I
moment.
made, in that moment, and I can tell you just as clear as day. And I remember making that decision. I'm going to live. I'm going to enjoy life. Because of those things, I worked so hard on me that I had dug so deep and found things that I hadn't even found in times before in working the steps. So all of that stuff happened, and it just gave me more of awareness of me and who I am and what I want, and the things that happen in life, and not being a victim. And it sad, horrible things happen, but you can still continue to live. I needed someone to tell me I was okay. And I tell them that all the time. I always say, you're okay. You are okay. No matter what is going on, you are okay. I was filled with resentment. I was even resentful at TJ. I was resentful at Tom. I was resentful at this other woman. I was resentful at me. So the thing is I worked on that a lot. And the thing with other people, what I was taught is to pray for them every single day and to ask God to give them everything that you want. Now, that sounded absolutely ridiculous to me. But
Mm-hmm.
but the truth of the matter is, those things, those suggestions probably saved my life.
And so you
It
did it even though
definitely.
you didn't believe it? Is that what you mean?
Oh,
Or
I,
didn't you didn't
I did it even though I didn't believe it. Always did it, even if I didn't believe it, even if I didn't feel it. I did what I was suggested to do.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, I ended up um, forgiving him,
Hmm.
forgiving TJ. It was kind of a process, but the thing is the more that I worked on it, the better that it got throughout the entire process of my recovery, through those hard times. And then there's been a lot of good too. It's really finding out who I am, and loving me for me, flaws and all. And I shared earlier that I always ran, or I was looking for all these outside things to make me feel complete. And I didn't realize until I got into recovery, the things I was running from, that I just always felt so empty, so alone, unlovable, all of those things that I believe today are all delusions. It wasn't real. My sponsor would tell me, you live in delusions. That is not fact. And once I start to love me, then I'm able to continue on with life and be a productive member of society. And here's the truth: I am by no means perfect. My life is not perfect, but it is so much better than it ever was. And I feel comfortable today in my own skin, mistakes and all. I have always wanted a home that I could entertain in, that I could have people here to enjoy life. And so the thing is we moved to Florida. I'm married now to my third husband, Mark, and
Who's
we
amazing,
have an
I know,
amazing
by the way. Yeah. Yeah.
we have an amazing life. And the thing is, um, you know, we're transplants, so we don't have family here, and most people who come here don't have family here. And it's always important to me that people are not alone, and during the holidays and during special events, and so we have kind of made it our mission that every holiday our doors open. People in the community can come, they can get something to eat, they can fellowship, they can laugh, they're not alone. And we have a house that's set up for entertaining.
Well, and I see this board behind you. Yeah, go
Yes.
grab it. Go grab that board. So, okay, so this board that you're holding up here, how does this connect to what we're talking about right now? Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so what this represents is this is what I call our Florida family. And I do want to make mention, I have such a great relationship with my family today. My mom and dad and I absolutely love and adore them. And we have gotten through so much throughout this journey of my recovery. But in the meantime, here in Florida, us being transplants, we have gotten this fantastic, what I call again, our Florida family. I have these amazing people in my
Look
life
at that.
that I get to do life with. And we all get together. We all do everything together. We have these Halloween parties and New Year's parties, and we do things for Christmas. And it just absolutely has blown my mind. It's the life that I never, ever thought possible.
Look at your face. You're just beaming as you talk about it. And, you did. You created everything that you said you wanted to. A beautiful home. You've got the recovery, a successful career, an incredible husband. You talked about the kids and how you now have, you said 4 or 5 kids in your life too?
So I have 6 children that God
6.
has given me in my
Look
life.
at that.
Yes, and I love each and every one of them.
What a great way to end our time together. Thank you so much for being here, Darcie. It's really been a pleasure. And I feel so honored that you shared your story with me and with everybody else. Well, thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Shelly-Anne.
Yeah.